You are now watching The Meech.
Hey everyone, and welcome to a very special episode of Swamp Talk. I am joined here by Joshi, also known as the Bit Block, and this is a momentous occasion. Joshi has been one of my favorite YouTubers for a very long time. I've been watching him since middle school, and having this momentous occasion is just insane. If you were to tell I Love Nintendo 1999 this, back when I was a kid, I wouldn't have believed you, but here we are. This is crazy.
Here we are indeed, Demeech. Let's kick it off by talking about how bad Luigi's Mansion 2 is. So, you start.
Can I talk about the Switch one? Because I feel like they could have remade it better. But, you know...
Demeech, I razz Demeech for liking the Luigi's Mansion sequels.
You know what? That's what I like about you. You're willing to say it how it is, and that has inspired me a lot. But when it comes to Luigi's Mansion 2, I will say, if I'm going to critique it, I will say there's no ghost variety, and looking back, the art direction's kind of polygonal and not spooky enough.
It's just bad everywhere you slice it. Any way you slice it, it's a bad game.
That's a pretty good start. Now, I'd like to hear why Super Mario Sunshine is inferior to Super Mario Odyssey.
I knew I shouldn't have agreed to do this.
No, I love Super Mario Sunshine. I'm willing to stand by it. I will say it's better than Super Mario 64. But for this discussion, we're going to be discussing the Nintendo Switch 2. As I'm sure many of you are aware, pretty much everything is leaked. Nintendo has waited so long that everyone else is revealing it for them, so they're doing Nintendo a favor. And we're going to be discussing our thoughts on the Nintendo Switch 2, our thoughts on the system itself, the Joy-Cons. Will it have a gimmick? Will it need a gimmick? What games will it launch with? And just overall, is this a good successor? So, with the Nintendo Switch 2, this is based on leaks, and at this point, it's a good time to talk about the leaks, because how I feel about leaks, most of them, they're pretty much, always most of the time, someone just goes on a forum and then says, oh, my uncle works at Nintendo, and these videos then these leaks then get adapted into videos on the countless Nintendo Switch 2 rumor channels, and it's pretty much all fake. That's what usually the leaks are.
Yeah, I don't usually engage in leaks that much because I just feel like, a lot of the times I don't care because it's like when the system is shown, that'll be when I see it, So I've not really been somebody who's been hunting for every little bit of information about what it could be because, it'll be whatever it'll be and they'll show it when it's ready. So I know a bit about the leaks for sure, but yeah, I don't know. I don't think Nintendo's waited too long necessarily to show it officially. But at the same time, it's clear that like now other people are revealing it for them. But then it's also maybe like, does it really matter? Because it might not really be about the system so much. It's going to be about the games. So as long as the games are not revealed, Nintendo is probably okay,
Right.
I don't know. Yeah.
Now when it comes to those leaks before, anything before the leaks that started happening at the end of November and into December, they're pretty much all fake. My main question about the Nintendo Switch 2 isn't what kind of system it'll be. It's not even about the games. What's going to happen all of the Nintendo Switch 2 channels? Because originally they were covering the Nintendo Switch Pro, which we all know that absolutely happened, and then it evolved to the Nintendo Switch 2. So what's going to happen to them?
Well, about a month after the system launches, they're going to start rumor videos about the Nintendo Switch 2 Pro. They'll go right into there's a new variant of the Switch 2 that's already in the works, and they'll go into that. They'll be talking about that Switch 2 Pro in no time. I'm betting money on it. That's what they're going to do.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Gotta follow that algorithm.
Gotta follow That's pretty much why I'm just... Nintendo 2024 YouTube, that's pretty much what it was. A lot of the content was just these fake Nintendo Switch 2 leak videos. Like, with the Nintendo Switch, when that was known as the NX, when that was being rumored, I will say that was a more exciting time to speculate and think about the future of Nintendo because we knew it wasn't going to be a Wii U successor. It was something new, and a lot of the leaks and rumors had credibility to them. Like, there were patents and such, and even when there were the hoaxes, they were at least fun. Do you remember that one that was the 3D printed controller that had the screen on it? It was oval shaped and had the thumbsticks.
Never seen that. I have no idea what that is. That was for the Switch 2?
That was for the Switch, back when it was the NX.
Oh, no, I don't remember that. I don't remember seeing that.
But
Again, I don't really look at many of the rumors. I kind of just know the basic ones. I remember when there was like a Frisbee with a Mario star on it, and that was like a prototype for the Wii remote at one point. I remember that.
I think that's in the
going with
Nintendo
them, yeah.
Museum.
Yeah.
But speculation for the Nintendo Switch 2 has not been as fun as it was for the original Switch. How do you feel about that? Because back in 2016, that was like what most Nintendo content and what Nintendo fans really wanted to see. And we weren't getting any games either, for the most part.
I think it's probably not quite as fun because I think a lot of people have just accepted that it's going to be like an iterative console and it's going to look like the difference between a DSi and a 3DS maybe or something. I don't know. The leaks that we've seen, I probably would not be able to tell it was a new system by just glancing at it. I'd have to really like get in and be like, wait a minute, that looks a little different. Okay, it's a little bit more curved here. Like it looks very samey. I know it's bigger and stuff, but I think that's probably why there's not as much like speculation or whatever about the system. So I think people have just kind of accepted like, the system's not really the selling point.
Yeah, and even before, it was pretty much, we kind of knew this would be an iteration of the Switch because it's their best-selling console. How would they not follow it up?
Yeah, you can't be like, oh, hey, we made a system that is 2-in-1. It's you can take it with you, and then you can also, play it on a TV. And then, oh, hey, by the way, the next generation, we're not going to do that anymore. And here's, so of course they were going to keep the Switch element to it. That just, I feel like from the launch of the Switch, we all kind of felt like that was going to be the case, right?
Right. Because how could he really go back from that? With the Wii, motion controls were a revolution. But for the next system, they focused on the gamepad, which was not a good idea. Some games were good with the gamepad. I would say Super Mario Maker took good use out of it. Splatoon to an extent because there was a gyro. Nintendo Land and Game & Wario. But then you had games like Star Fox Zero, and it really just made it to be a gimmick that was more of a detriment than something that was revolutionary like the Wii motion controls.
The gamepad, you've seen a lot of people talking about how there's I don't know if these are real rumors or what, but people are like, oh, there might be an option for the Switch 2 to where you can like stream onto the TV while also being in handheld mode, so you could kind of do a Wii U gamepad sort of situation. That could be maybe sort of interesting. I don't know if they would really want to do that. I mean, why would you want to? You should never want to do anything that was like the Wii U ever again. I don't think Nintendo will ever go back to trying to be like the Wii U, but Nintendo's crazy, so it might be something they do where they use like some kind of casting ability that the system has to where you can, do the Wii U gamepad kind of thing. The asymmetrical gameplay, as they call it.
That would be pretty cool if it was just one of the features, but if it was the selling point, that would be insane. You can't do that as a selling point. But with all that being said, we've seen the design of the Nintendo Switch 2. It's pretty much confirmed what it's going to be, so the system itself, it is pretty much the Nintendo Switch, but larger. Joy-Cons are curved. It has an additional button. What are your thoughts on the system itself? Because apparently what it's going to be is it's going to be a more powerful Switch.
Yeah, it's a very not Nintendo thing to do, right? They're not usually a company that wants to just put the same system out. This feels like a Sony kind of a deal. And I know there's a group of fans that are going to be happy about that. They just want more powerful, like a more powerful system. And part of me really wants that as well. When I'm playing Mario Odyssey and it looks crispy and low res and it's like, why, You play like Kirby and the Forgotten Land. You play that game. And it's like, boy, this would be great in 4K at 60 frames a second. So more power is good because like games will actually run the way they should. But then also it's like, maybe that could be a little boring. You're a Nintendo fan because you kind of like the silliness. I don't think we should like be shoving a controller up our nose and wiggling our head around in order to control Mario. But at the same time, innovation is like such a part of the very blood of Nintendo as a company. And if you don't innovate, then you're not Nintendo. So I don't know, like as a system, it looks so similar to the Switch. I know you could be like, well, the DS and then the DS Lite and the DSi, and it's like, look, those all look similar. Yeah, but those are like still the same system. They're,
Right.
like, still the same hardware. You'd have to compare like the Nintendo DS Lite to, you know, the 3DS. Nobody's going to look at the 3DS and the DS Lite and be like, oh, those are like the same thing. You'd know that like 3DS has the wider screen and different stuff going on. Whereas the Switch and the Switch 2, from what we've seen, I don't know how you're going to really tell the difference between those. It's such a minimal physical change that it could be detrimental to them when grandma goes to buy a Switch game or something, or goes to buy the Switch. You won't know what it is. So I don't know, you know, maybe it's different colors. Like maybe the system is like metallic or something, or it's all white or whatever they might do, or I don't know. So yeah, well, we really kind of have to wait and see what does the final product look like. We've seen the leaks and everything, but maybe those leaks don't show the color scheme or all, you know, some of the like cosmetic elements to it. But as a system, the system itself, from what we've seen leaked, it looks very not Nintendo to me because it's so similar to the way the normal Switch looks.
I think it goes to show that we're in a completely different era of Nintendo, where back when Iwata was president, it was all about innovation. Sometimes those innovations didn't work out too well, but at the end of the day, it was Nintendo experimenting with different ideas, and even with the Switch, there was a console handheld hybrid aspect. And there were the quirky features that Nintendo is known for, like the IR camera. Wasn't used for a lot, but still there. But with the Switch 2, it is not Nintendo. It looks eerily similar to the original Switch. The only comparison I can really think of is the original Game Boy to the Game Boy Color. That is something that is a little bit of a gray area, whether the Game Boy Color is a successor to the Game Boy, but I see it as such because it has many exclusive games. So, in terms of that, how they're going to differentiate it is important. Apparently one of the color schemes is going to be white and orange and black and blue, like the new 2DS XL. I've seen design mock-ups for it, and if it's a white and orange Joy-Con on the left and a blue and black one on the right, that's gonna look pretty ugly. That is not gonna look good.
Yeah, so this is something that leaked? Like somebody said, oh, this is a leak?
Next Handheld is the one who put out the image of the dock and the system itself, and he's saying that the orange and white, blue and black's gonna be iconic, so there might be going for that color scheme. If it's all white and orange or all blue and black, it's gonna look nice, but if it's a mismatch of the two, that's gonna look kind of ugly. That's gonna look kind of jarring.
Well, blue and black was kind of the color scheme of the deluxe Wii U bundle. And so I don't know if they'd want to do that again. And the orange and white was, like you said, the 3DS or the 2DS thing, right? There's
New 2DS XL.
Yeah, so like why would they do, I don't know if I would see them going back to these arbitrary color schemes from old systems. I don't know that they would do that. So, I don't know.
Be kind of weird. I mean, this is a new era of Nintendo. This is all very weird in terms of Nintendo. If this were any other company, hey, fairly normal. But Nintendo's standards, just the name of the system itself being the Nintendo Switch 2, that's also very non-Nintendo. And that's a good point to bring up, because what do you think of the name of the system? Because I've seen a lot of people say it's not a very creative name and is so non-Nintendo.
Well, I think they're trying to avoid a Wii U. I'm mentioning the Wii U a lot, but I think they're trying to avoid another Wii U situation where they had this really successful console with the Wii, and then they came out with this confusing name, confusing branding, and so they're probably thinking, well, you can't think it's the same thing if we just put 2 after it. Everybody understands 2 usually means a sequel, a new thing. So, and you know, you could say, well, it worked for PlayStation 2, worked for PlayStation 3 and 4. Like, PlayStation's always been numerical. So maybe Nintendo just feels like, yeah, our console is called the Switch. And that's just, I think it actually makes sense. Like, we can argue that creatively it's lame, because it is lame. Creatively, that's lame.
Yeah.
But in every other way, it makes total sense that you would just put the number after it, a number 2. Because like Nintendo nowadays, more than ever, they're looking at themselves as being like a brand, like a global entertainment brand with theme parks and movies and clothing and all this other stuff. So like Nintendo is the brand, but the Switch is like their game system. So giving it a number 2 because it is the second Switch makes sense. And grandma won't be confused and nobody will be confused because everybody knows 2 means a new thing. So I think it's creatively dumb, but it's financially and like logically the correct move.
They're not going to take any chances after the Wii U when it comes to stuff like that, and I will agree with you, it does make sense.
They won't call this the Nintendo Switch U. I can bet my life on that.
Be hilarious if they called it the Switch U and the main selling point was a casting thing where it's like the gamepad. It would be insane to see that reality. I don't think they would either. Because I've noticed with Nintendo's recent games, a lot of them seem to be responding to fan feedback, aka what the consumers want. And it's great! Nintendo has seemed very business-oriented recently, and some of the innovation is gone, unfortunately. There's missing charm that there was from the 3DS and Wii U era, but at the same time, we're getting games like Super Mario Bros. Wonder, we're getting remakes of games like Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, which fans have wanted for years, and it makes sense from a business standpoint, and for the consumers as well.
I think when it comes to innovation, there's still room for innovation like with the Switch too, but it might just not come from like the physical aspect of the system. It could be like, remember the Wara Wara Plaza? What if they have like a Wara Wara Plaza? Because there was some test that people took part in, and it was like this online thing Nintendo had, and they selected certain people to you remember that?
Yeah.
There's like some mass online thing, and it seemed like that was like a way of communicating, right? It was like a community hub kind of a game app thing they were working on. So like, what if one of the innovations is that they're totally innovating on what it means to have a menu on your game console? Maybe it's not just a flat menu with some game icons. Maybe it is this kind of communal sort of deal or something. So yeah, I mean, you can innovate in a lot. I think the 3DS innovated in a lot of ways with its menu in terms of like just the stuff you could do from the menu. Like you had the little claw machine with the badge arcade and the swap note and the Street Pass games and Face Raiders and the little ARs. Like, so there's like a lot of stuff that can be innovative, even without looking like at the system itself, you know?
That was something I was just going to bring up. Great minds think alike. But the 3DS is a great example when it comes to that, because at face value, sure, there is the 3D gimmick of it. That was the main selling point for a little bit. But obviously, it was all about the 2D afterwards. Because the late 3DS games, they just completely got rid of the 3D. I love the 3D on the 3DS. I thought it was a great feature. How do you feel about it?
I liked it. I think the only time I wouldn't use it is if I was like recording footage for a game. Because sometimes it would like make the things off-centered or whatever if you had it on when I was recording like flat footage, you know?
Right.
But when I was just playing myself, I liked it. I thought some games it was cooler than others, just because the game itself was something you'd want to play in 3D. And sometimes the developer would just do a better job at, you know, programming the 3D effect in there. I remember Mario Golf on the 3DS had really bad 3D, which was very surprising to me because it seemed like the perfect game to have depth. Like when you're putting, you want to see that depth. But I remember that one wasn't very good. Mutant Mudds had really good 3D effect. So yeah, I think the 3D was fun. I'd use it kind of on and off, go back and forth.
I would pretty much always use it unless I was recording flat footage like you were, or if it was just so minimal that it wasn't worth it, like in New Super Mario Bros. 2, then I'd have it turned down. But really, when it comes to the Nintendo 3DS, or go on?
No, I was just going to say, you know what game used the 3D very well, Demetch?
Paper Mario Sticker Star.
Oh, he read my mind.
I'll give it that. I will give it that.
It has some of the best 3D effect on the entire system.
I can't argue with you there, and I will say the music's good. But everything else, what more can be said? Congrats on being one of the 4 fans of Paper Mario Sticker Star, though. But
there are 3 of us. Thank you very much. There are 3 of us.
Hey, almost as much as people who own the Wii U. But in terms of the 3DS, I feel like the features like Street Pass, that would be amazing to have on the Nintendo Switch too. they could bring back
They gotta
Street
bring
Pass. Everyone is bringing their Switch with them, and having an app like that would just really separate it from the original Switch. Just having more features and having the fun apps, it's what's on the inside that can really count when it comes to making the Nintendo Switch 2 innovative and unique, even if it looks pretty similar, because if you didn't see what was on the inside of the 3DS and only knew about the name, you would think, oh, it's just a DS but in 3D. You would have no idea of stuff like Street Pass or Face Raiders, or any of the fun features. Stuff like Miiverse even on the Wii U, or Wara Wara Plaza. There is room for innovation there.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the little badge arcade was a way to you'd win these little decorative things that you could put on your menu, decorate your menu with these badges and things. And they also had the themes you could buy. Like, bring that stuff back. The one of the issues I had with the Switch was it just felt a little lifeless. It felt kind of not Nintendo. I remember, like, the first time I booted it up and I looked at the menu, I was like, oh, they're going to update this. Like, they'll update it with themes and different colors, and they'll update it to where you can have multiple rows of game icons instead of just this one. And of course, that really never happened. So I'd like to see that. Innovate with the menu. I'm big on that. Big on that.
Yeah, I don't know what Nintendo was thinking. I understood that at launch, okay, they wanted something minimalistic that would get the job done, but it's been a decade, and it still looks pretty much the same. Actually, it does. The only thing that changed is a pseudo folder thing, and icons that you can get with the Nintendo Switch Online app. But overall, there is a lot of improvement room for the Nintendo Switch 2 to iterate on those areas that weren't present on the original Switch. But one area that definitely needed some improvement, and I'm not sure if we're really going to get a lot of it, is with the controllers. Let's talk about that. So as we all know, these ones are the exception because these are customized and don't drift. But the Joy-Cons, in general, are not good controllers. And the main problem with them is that, for one, they drift, and it does appear that they are addressing that issue. And two, just the size of them, and who is playing games like this, with a Joy-Con on its side like this? Is anyone really doing that? And if so, how could it possibly be comfortable?
It's funny because I've been playing with the Pro controller for a while. I got it when Tears of the Kingdom came out. I have the Tears of the Kingdom Pro controller. And I've been using that. I still do. That's like my main way of playing. But I did have to buy Joy-Cons for Super Mario Party Jamboree because there are mini games and modes that you can only access with Joy-Cons. So I was like, oh, well, I'm excited about the game. I want to get it. So I got them. And I had not held or used Joy-Cons for, over a year. And holy smokes, I absolutely hate them. I just hate them so. They feel so cheap. I mean, like, plastic feels cheap. The buttons are so unsatisfying to press and click. The analog sticks have, like, no movement. You, like, can barely move the analog stick. There's no, like, so it's just horrible controllers. Horrible controllers. The only thing good about them is that they had fun color schemes. I liked the neon colors that they were releasing. But other than that little novelty, they're just some of the most crappy, cheap, uncomfortable controllers to use. I like the idea of, like, having the controllers in both hands. I really like the Wii Remote and the Nunchuck. I'm a big fan of that. So it's, if they were better build quality and they had better analog sticks and better buttons and everything, I would like it. But they don't have that. And so it's just, I was really surprised after a year of not using them. When I held them again, I was like, wow, these are just the worst. So bad. So I stick with the Pro controller.
I would say that if you play your Switch enough, you definitely need to get a Pro controller, because playing games with the Joy-Cons, I could get away with doing them in the grip. I think that's fine. It's not ideal, but it can be alright. And there are some games where I do like the motion controls. I know this will probably kill you when I say it, but Pikmin 1 and 2, I do enjoy playing those, although it's not as precise as the Wii Remote. But it is nice being able to play Pikmin on the Switch. And in HD.
Did you play Pikmin 4?
I did. Of course I did.
Did you beat it?
I did. 100%.
Okay, Dimitri. I'm watching you.
Look, the Wii Remote and Nunchuck are the ideal controls, but I can't get past that. And Pikmin 4 is my second favorite Nintendo Switch game. I absolutely
What's your first?
love it. If I say it, you're probably going to get even more mad at me. Super Mario Odyssey.
Meech. We're gonna have a long talk after this.
But for motion controls, I do like the concept of having the controllers where you can put them in the grip, but also they can act as a Wii Remote and Nunchuck. That's a good idea. But when it comes to the Joy-Cons, what my main problems with them are, this is more of an inconvenience that's slight. It's not the main issue I have with them. There's no grip on the back of them. So, like you always say, there's no butt on the Joy-Cons. So when you're holding them, there's nothing to grip onto. And that can just get uncomfortable. I do feel like having a grip on the back would make extended play sessions a lot more comfortable. It's not something I particularly find to be that unbearable or that uncomfortable, but I know a lot of fans feel it is.
Yeah, I mean, you know, in theory, the Joy-Cons are a really good idea, and in practice and seeing the result, they're not good. So maybe the new ones will... Oh god, do you think the old Joy-Cons will work with the new system?
I think they will. They can't be connected to it, but I think that they will be compatible. Like, let's just say you're having a Super Mario Party Jamboree sesh. You can probably use the old Joy-Cons for that and connect them to the console, but not into the handheld because they use the magnetic Joy-Cons.
Yeah. So I think it'll be one of those things where you can support the Joy-Cons. And, I don't know why you'd want to use them, but I think it'll be an option, yeah.
But my main problem with them, and this is not applied to these Joy-Cons because they're customized and I made them. If you want custom Joy-Cons, feel free to check out my Etsy store, Gator Garage, where I'll make you custom Joy-Cons. But there's no D-pad. If you have most Joy-Cons, or any of them made by Nintendo, there's no D-pad on them. There's just those 4 buttons, and that's a big problem when it comes to playing 2D platformers. The sacrifice of not having a D-pad is not worth it for what Nintendo considers to be more important, which is taking the Joy-Cons off, you're playing in tabletop mode, hey, do you want to play the Switch with me? You pass it to a friend, and from there, you're playing in multiplayer. How many people are actually doing that, you think? Because I've done it probably 3 times, and most of it was towards the beginning of the Switch's life just to test out the novelty of passing a Joy-Con to a friend. I've played way more hours in 2D platformers than ever passing a Joy-Con to a friend like that. And if I'm gonna play with friends, I'm gonna play on the TV and use Pro Controllers. Or grip Joy-Cons.
Yeah, I mean, I think it might be something that's more popular in Japan than anywhere else. It might be the only place it's a thing. I don't even know if it's popular in Japan, but, you know, looking at Nintendo's advertisements, that seems to be what they really push in Japan, the little tabletop mode, and then you hand the person a controller. I don't know, but that's my only thought is maybe in Japan they are okay with it, but in the rest of the world, I can't imagine many people wanting to play that way.
Yeah.
It's pretty bad.
For the amount of times that happens, I think people would be willing to settle with the D-pad.
Yeah, sacrificing the iconic D-pad for something that the majority of people aren't even going to use is not a good decision. It's a stupid decision to do that, yeah.
And the fact that they're doing it again, unless there's a solution like a cover you put over the directional buttons to turn it into a D-pad, then that is easily the worst part of the new Joy-Cons. Because from what I've seen, they are larger, they are going to be a little more comfortable, even though they're pretty much the same. There's a C button on it, which we're not sure what that does yet. Apparently it could mean connect. If they're magnetic, one idea is you could flip the Switch vertically and play games dual screen, so it's kind of like bringing the DS era back, which also could be sort of like the gamepad thing, casting to the TV. We'll have to wait and see on that one.
That could be a C for cast, and that could be to cast the thing to the TV without having to use the dock. Be a possibility. I mean, wanting to make something like a Wii U in the year 2025 is one of the most Nintendo ideas I can think of, because nobody in their right mind would say, yes, do something like the Wii U. And that's exactly why Nintendo would try to do something like the Wii U with a cast button. Nintendo Land 2 confirmed.
I mean, I'd be down for that, and as long as it's not a major feature, you know what? I'd be fine with that. Like, For the Switch, there are a few games that take advantage of the motion controls, but that wasn't the main feature of it. The Wii is one of my favorite Nintendo consoles. I would say second favorite now. But a lot of the games on that, they did cater to a more casual demographic, and with motion controls, you weren't getting a lot of games that felt more hardcore, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can see that.
Not hardcore in terms of like being like God of War, Dark Souls, but just a more traditional gaming experience. That's something we get on the Switch, even if there are a few motion controlled titles. So if there are a few games like Nintendo Land 2 and Game & Wario, I'd absolutely be down for that.
Yeah, and I imagine there will be. I imagine there probably will be something at launch that will be, using some kind of gimmick that we don't know about yet with the system.
If they're gonna go that route, I'd definitely like to see Super Mario Maker 3 early on. I feel that is one aspect that the first game did better than the second one, where it was just more seamless using the gamepad.
I want a Super Mario Maker that lets us make 3D Mario games. That would be my ideal.
Or Mario Kart Maker. That'd be really
Talked
cool
about
too.
that once. I think the director of Mario Kart said that they thought a little bit about a track editor, but then they decided against it because they felt like it's too difficult to make a track in Mario Kart. And so the type of tracks people would be making would not be up to par with what the developers were able to make. I think that's kind of what he was saying with that, but who knows?
I would assume something similar would be for 3D Mario, but it'd be really cool to see regardless. Now, in terms of the gimmick, do you think that the gimmick is just going to be more power in 4K? Or do you think that it'll be the casting? What do you think the main selling point's going to be? Because I'm assuming that it would just be more power and having a larger screen. I feel like they're going to go that route, and casting would just be a nice bonus.
I think that the gimmick is just going to be, we've got amazing games, and it's a more... it's a Switch that's actually capable of doing what the original one probably should have been able to do with running the games. But I think the gimmick will be, like I said, maybe there's going to be like a new take on the Wara Wara Plaza. Maybe Miiverse will come back. Why not? Look at what's social media is a hellhole right now. The whole idea of getting rid of the Miiverse stuff was like, well, people just use Twitter. Well, people just use Facebook. Now people don't really like that stuff. That stuff's pretty nasty these days. So Nintendo also loves control. They don't really want to have to use someone else's platform if they can help it. So for Nintendo to have their own version of Twitter with Miiverse coming back, I can see that being a thing. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I think the gimmicks are going to be less control oriented and more stuff like that, like gimmicks built into the system, little apps and things.
Oh, I definitely feel that way too. Do you think it necessarily needed to have a major new gimmick? I don't think it did need that.
At this point in time, no, but maybe in 3 years, yes. Right now, I feel like the hype around the Switch has pretty much died down. You can look at the sales of games this year. They're not great. They're not bad, but they're not great. I mean, how many Switches have sold? Like 130 million, something like that, right?
I believe
Crazy
we're
number.
at 144 million or 148 million, somewhere along the lines of there.
So let's say like 140 million Switches have sold, right? Now, of course, that doesn't mean that's unique users because people buy doubles, some people buy triples. But let's just say 100 million unique potential buyers own a Switch. Then you got games that are being released with Princess Peach in them and with Mario in them, and they're selling like 2 million copies. So that to me says like the hype is gone for the Switch. So the problem Nintendo could run into with the Switch 2 is, oh, sure, we're all excited when it first comes out and all that. But like, if people are already like, what is it possible people are just kind of bored of the Switch as a brand and they really are hungry for something crazy and weird and new, then you're going to have a problem in like 2 or 3 years, And this is kind of something we've seen with like Sony. Or like a new PlayStation will come out and it's like, it's just a more powerful PlayStation and, people aren't really that excited. I know some people don't want to hear it, but you do kind of need that weird, wacky gimmick. You need the weird thing sometimes. And I could be wrong, and I don't know. I don't really care if I'm wrong or right on it, but there's a part of me that wonders, like, maybe it does need a gimmick. Maybe it needs some kind of crazy thing that makes people go, whoa, we couldn't do that before. Or, whoa, only Nintendo would have come up with that. Because where are we going to be in 2 years? Once Mario Kart's out, once the 3D Mario's out, are we going to be back to that feeling of like, oh, it was just a Switch? It's kind of like when Breath of the Wild, we got Breath of the Wild, and then we got Tears of the Kingdom. And everybody's so excited about Tears of the Kingdom, and then you gave it like a month or two, and you started to see more people like, that was it? It's just the same thing. But we can put a mushroom on the end of a sword now, and we can build some vehicle that doesn't really work. You have that initial excitement, but then you start to realize, this is kind of the same thing we already had. And so I'm wondering if without some sort of crazy gimmick or some new catch, will the Switch 2 be able to have the same momentum and excitement? I don't know. Maybe, but I think it's a possibility that Nintendo needs to plan for that kind of thing.
I agree with you there. In terms of a gimmick, the main concern I always have with them is if the gimmick is something that can be a detriment to the system itself.
Yeah.
The gamepad was definitely a detriment to the Wii U, and I don't feel like it brought more good to the games than, because you see how the games turned out on that a lot of the time, and a lot of games just wouldn't use a gamepad. It wasn't a well thought out selling point, but at the time, or in terms of the Switch 2, at this point, I don't think we do need the gimmick, but there does need to be something that separates it from the Nintendo Switch. Going from the DS to the 3DS, like we said, it wasn't just the 3D, it was also the features that it had, and also just what the games from that era were like. I will say the DS era games were definitely better. They were more creative. A lot of the 3DS Mario games felt very bland. But maybe they could be even crazier or wackier with the Switch 2 Mario games. And using 4K, maybe the extra power could just lead to more innovation throughout their games. That pretty much is going to be the gimmick for now. And I don't think it necessarily needs a major new gimmick, but at least from a software standpoint, it does need things to stand out.
Well, it's funny because one of the things you can do is like I look at a Joy-Con, and there's a lot of things I would throw out. Like, you don't need the camera. You barely used it, Nintendo. What a waste. Every time you buy the Joy-Cons for $80, you are buying things that you're not going to use, and that's really stupid. The camera, I would even say throw out the NFC stuff with the amiibo scanning. If you want to still scan amiibos, go buy an old Joy-Con or buy that little platform disc thing. I have one of those. So it's like, let's move on beyond that. Don't put the NFC stuff in. Don't put the HD rumble. I don't think anybody cares about that. Just put normal rumble.
I care about it.
Well, listen, we're going to talk about that later too. I can't tell the difference. Go and get an old GameCube controller. Obviously not a Wavebird. It has to be one that plugs in. And feel the rumble in an old GameCube controller and compare that to the rumble in a Joy-Con. The GameCube controller, you feel like it's really rumbling. You really feel something in there. The Joy-Cons, I feel like it's just weak little rumbles. So I would say put basic rumble in, get rid of the NFC, get rid of the camera, and I think you could probably chisel about $10 off at least with that. So the point I'm making is actually I don't know what the point I'm making is. Oh, the gimmicks. I do remember what I was going to say. So what they could do is if Nintendo comes up with some crazy new idea of how you could play games, you can actually make that a peripheral where it's not based into the basics controller. So kind of look at Labo, right? Labo was like, hey, we have this crazy idea for cardboard. Okay. You can just do crazy ideas as their own thing and not literally bake them into the core controller that every game would be played with, So I think that's a smarter way moving forward.
That is a good idea to have it be peripherals rather than baked into the system. I will say though, bringing up Labo, the problem with a lot of Nintendo's recent accessories like that is just the software itself, the games. They feel lifeless. With Labo, it was cool making them, but the games themselves, there was nothing to them. They're horrible. You just play it once, that's pretty much it, never touch it again. Whereas with something like Wii Sports, that's a game that you play for generations to come. I still play Wii Sports. And Wii Sports Resort, of course. So
yeah, all the development went in. When it came to Labo, all the development went into the cardboard element. How do you build the cardboard and all that stuff. And then the games were ironically not even the important part of the game. So yeah, that was the mistake there. But I think of the DK bongo drums in the GameCube days. You can do something like that. You come up with some weird wacky controller and you say, oh, and then you support it with some games and then that's that. It doesn't need to be more than that. It's also The balance board is another example, right? The Wii balance board. Like, that's really cool. And it's for Wii Fit, and you can play it in like some snowboard games and this and that. And so like they could just do that moving forward and not have to put all this stuff in the main system, in the main controller, because then it like barely gets used, you know?
It's a good idea. Or when you brought up the DK bongos, it would be cool to see the return of the DK bongos for the Switch too.
Bring back those bongos.
You know, it's a real shame that Donkey Kong Barrel Blast didn't use them, because it could have maybe been a good game if it did.
Yeah, I think it would have been... I actually don't think Barrel Blast is that bad. I do think the big problem it has is one of the fun elements of it was stripped out of the game. Like, they didn't even let it... Like, why not at least have the support there for anybody that wants to do it? I don't know. It was clearly, like, programmed, so I don't know why they wouldn't have just kept that in there.
Yeah, because you could use the GameCube controllers with the Wii. I was going to ask you... Did any of Nintendo's gimmicky games resonate with you with the Nintendo Switch? Because when it comes to mine, Labo VR, Mario Kart Live Home Circuit.
No, I think. And that's one of the weird things, because in the Wii generation, I actually really did like the casual stuff. The Wii Fit games and Wii Sports Resort and Wii Sports and, Wii Play, Wii Party. Like, I liked all that kind of stuff. But with the Switch generation, it all just felt like it didn't have the same level of care that it did in the Wii days. It just kind of felt generic, and I don't know, I didn't like it. Like, I didn't like Ring Fit Adventure, didn't like Labo. There's just a lot of stuff I thought didn't really seem as good as the Wii casual stuff.
It didn't seem to have an identity of its own. A lot of it was just very great value-esque. This is apparent with the Labo games. I wouldn't say Ring Fit as much. Game Builder Garage also comes to mind. Nintendo Switch Sports. Having the Wii series, I understood why they wanted to move on from that, but still, just not having the Mii's present. Do you think that the Mii's could be more present on the Switch too, or do you think Nintendo's completely moved on? And another question, when you brought up Amiibos, do you think that they're pretty much done with Amiibos? Because they've been reprinting a lot recently.
What was the first question?
First question, do you think that the Mii's could return?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Well, I mean, they use Mii's in the Mario Kart ride at Universal, so they clearly, are not totally done with the Mii's if they're forever cementing them in a ride that will be there for decades. I don't think Nintendo thinks like that. I don't think anybody at Nintendo said, we are officially never doing Mii's. I don't think there's like a universal mentality at the company like that. I think, it's the same way. It's like they're not saying we're never doing a wave race. We're not doing an F-Zero. They don't think like that. They just think, if the time comes, we'll use them. So I don't know why they chose not to use the Mii's for the main characters in Nintendo Switch Sports. My assumption would be, God, I don't know. Maybe they just thought, oh, well, let's give this a different identity. Maybe the detail. They probably wanted there to be more detail in the characters, and they felt like the Mii's wouldn't cut it. So I don't know. But I do know that they have to have seen that a lot of people prefer the Mii's. And so anything is possible. I don't know. I think it could go either way. They could be like, yeah, we don't really use the Mii's because we came up with this new thing. Or they could be like, let's go back to the Mii's. People like them and they work, so let's do more Mii things. They did, not Miitopia. What was the game?
It was Miitopia. That was the only Mii game.
Oh, I'm thinking of Miitomo. That was the game that was on
That was the mobile
Miitopia.
game.
Yeah. So clearly they're open to it. So I don't think there's any ban or anything like that at Nintendo. I think it's just a matter of if or when.
It just seems like their more casual lineup is kind of lifeless. Clubhouse games is another example of that.
Yeah.
So another thing I'd like to just see come to the Switch too is just more identity to these casual games. Although for the Nintendo Switch, the casual games make up a minority of the games. There are a lot more standard games out there. It's not like it was with the Nintendo Wii.
Would you categorize ARMS as one of the casuals, or do you look at that as a core game?
I look at it as a core game that wasn't thought out well. I think that from what I played, it does have some good ideas. I like how it iterates on Wii Sports Boxing, but there wasn't enough content to draw people in. It wasn't fleshed out as much as it could be, so I wouldn't consider it that. I'd consider ARMS something that Nintendo wanted to take off and be a series like Splatoon, but it just wasn't that.
Yeah, I'd say it probably is that too, yeah.
It'd be interesting if it comes to the Nintendo Switch 2 or returns. But for our final segment, this is the most important part. What games do you think we're going to see the launch year of the Nintendo Switch 2?
I think it's going to launch with Mario Kart and probably a big Mario game. I would assume one of them will be launch and the other one will be like the Christmas holiday season of next year. Mario Kart is their biggest thing, right? That's their biggest franchise. It's huge. They've got the Mario Kart ride opening in the summertime where you are, in May in Florida. So there's a lot of synergy there to make a new Mario Kart right when the final land opens in the theme parks. Technically, I think it's coming to Singapore too, but nobody's thinking about that. And the Florida one is like the ultimate version of the land. So to have like, oh, the new Mario Kart ride is open in Florida, and oh, the new Mario Kart game just came to the Switch too. I think it'll be a launch. I think if they're smart, you make Mario Kart 9 the main launch game. The reason you buy the system, everybody's got to have it. And then I also think you also launch day one with Metroid Prime 4, and then some kind of casual game. Some kind of like Wii Sports-esque sort of a thing. And I think those are like the 3 games from Nintendo that are available from day one with the system. I do think it could maybe swap out Mario Kart for a 3D Mario. So it's 3D Mario day one, and it's the other stuff. But I feel like if you want to hit it off with like the best possible game, and you want to really kick things off on the right foot, you lead with Mario Kart, and then you do the 3D Mario as the holiday game in like November.
I would say the same.
Yeah, unless the 3D Mario game is doing something innovative with something the system can do. If it's like, well, we really want to lead with that 3D Mario Adventure game because it's really showing what the system's new capabilities are. But I think Mario Kart could do that as well. So I think you lead with Mario Kart. You want a lot of people to play this new system, so it's smarter to release a multiplayer game because like you can play together with your friend. Like I get the new system and I got the new Mario Kart, and my friend sees it and plays it, and I go, you can play it too. You got to go get the Switch too, and he gets, it's like a communal thing. Whereas a 3D Mario is not that. That is I'm playing it by myself, and that's really more of a holiday thing. You're cozy, you're playing that single player game by the fire. So that's the way I would do it. Those are the 3 main launch games plus the 3D Mario and the holiday. And then what do they do for the rest of that? I don't know. But launch games, that's the 3. Metroid Prime 4, Mario Kart 9, and then some kind of casual, fun, family, silly thing.
I was thinking that with Metroid Prime 4, I see that more as a summer title. I feel like launching it with Mario Kart 9 would not be a good idea since most of the attention would go to Mario Kart 9 over Metroid Prime 4. But what I could see launching with it is Pokemon Legends Zaza. It's called ZA, but I call it Pokemon Legends Zaza. The thing with that game is, a lot of people love the Pokemon games, and it would make sense to launch a Pokemon game with the Nintendo Switch 2 from a business standpoint.
But the Pokemon company is, of course, separate from Nintendo, so they might not really give a damn about, like, oh, we got to make sure the system's a success. They might just be like, that's Nintendo's job. We're making a game. And they already kind of have shown that they want to take their time with this game. With Pal World coming in and making a fool of them and doing so successful, and so many people talking about how Pal World's doing what Pokemon should be doing. I feel like they're going to want to get that one right. And I think, aren't Pokemon games generally holiday releases?
Yeah.
So I could see Pokemon being like the 2025 holiday. And again, I don't think Pokemon companies looking at it as... I don't think they look at Nintendo's system sales as a priority for them. Like, I don't think that's something they concern themselves with. They're just going to make games. So yeah, I think that'll probably come out in 2025, but I think that maybe be holiday.
Do you think?
Oh, and with Metroid Prime 4 though, I would say that is such a different game than Mario Kart 9 would be. That like when you go out and you buy a new game system, which I think it'll be like probably $400. So you like spend $400 on the system. I think most early adapters to a game system, they buy more than one game, and because Metroid Prime 4 is so different than Mario Kart, I think those would be kind of the 2 games you get. It's 2 very different experiences, for the like core Nintendo audience. So I don't think they'd be like, oh, we can't cannibalize the sales of Metroid Prime 4 with Mario Kart. I think if anything, you want Metroid Prime 4 to have that spotlight, right? That's one of the first games you can get for this new system, day one. I think the series needs that. So I don't think you want to wait on that so much, because then people will have already bought other games, and maybe they're kind of like, well, I already spent $650 on this new system. I'm going to take it easy for a little bit now until the holiday season. So I think and that game was in development for so long. It's the longest development for any Switch 2 game, right? So I'd say get that sucker out. I think it'll also probably be on the regular Switch as well. I think that'll be one of those things.
They said that it would be on the Switch.
Yeah.
I'm seeing where you're coming from now.
I think it'll be like 30 frames a second on the regular Switch and maybe like a lower frame rate. You're not going to get resolution. You're not going to get 1080p, 30 frames a second, I don't think. Maybe, who knows?
That footage that they showed in that direct, it's 60 frames on the regular Switch.
Well, wow, there you go. Oh yeah, it is, now that I think about it. Well, the Switch 2 could be like 4K, 60 frames a second, have some more impressive lighting kind of deal,
Right.
I think it'll be like that. I think it'll kind of be
instead
of having that thing with... I'm sorry, go ahead.
You think that the Nintendo Switch 2 could rely on one big game to launch a system like the original Switch did? Or it's going to need to have more?
Well, what did the original say? It had Breath of the Wild, obviously.
Breath of the Wild, 1-2 Switch, Snipper Clips, Skylanders, and Just Dance. And then there were some eShop games.
Oh, I mean, there's that's an instance of them just having one big game, but there's other instances where they would launch with more than one, I think, or even if it's just like a month after release or something, I think it'd be in their best interest to really go hard right off the bat, because they got a lot of dying interest in Switch, and you want to get that right back. You want people to be thinking about it. So I'd say you go in hard. You say, hey, boom, Mario Kart and Metroid. These are games you can get right off the bat.
Now, when it comes to Mario Kart, what do you think will differentiate it from Mario Kart 8 Deluxe? What do you think the gimmick's going to be? What's the selling point?
Ready for this? This is the selling point. So, they're going to look at the Mario movie. And in that movie, of course, there's the Rainbow Road Mario Kart scene. And they're going to draw inspiration from that. And in fact, I'm sure the developers probably had something to do with how that was represented in the movie. And if you watch that scene in the movie, the Mario Kart thing has a little bit more of like a Mad Max kind of battle, duke it out sort of a thing. You've got these karts that have these big bullet bill blasters and shell cannons and stuff. And so I think the next Mario Kart could really focus on that element. I was playing with dogs earlier, and dogs were playing with our collie. No, so I think, they're probably going to work. I don't know, who knows, but I would say they could work on the whole element of like the combat element of battle of racing. Mario Kart's always been about that. That's one of the things that has really set Mario Kart apart from any other racing game, is that it always had that focus on getting the items. So I think that they can make it to where you can really soup up your kart, to where you've got, like I said, those big cannons on it. You got those big metal teeth in the front that you can hit people with. You chomp on people when you get by them. Piranha plants for like an exhaust pipe or something. Just really go wild with that. And then the coins you collect when you're playing, you use that to buy all these pieces in a garage and really like soup up your go-kart. So I think taking that battle element that has always been a part of racing in Mario Kart and really bringing that to the next level, I think that could be a really cool thing. And my reason for thinking there's a chance they could do that is that's the way they represented it in the movie,
Right.
That's my guess. That'd be my thing.
Do you think they're still going to go about the Nintendo Kart route, or do you think it's going to be Mario Kart?
Well, the DLC for Mario Kart 8 and 8 Deluxe really did bring in the characters. I didn't love the way they handled that because it just feels a little odd. There's not enough to where it feels meaningful. It's just enough to where it feels like this is awkward. Like, why is Link in here? Why is one of the battle maps Splatoon theme, but it's only one? You know what I mean? So, yeah, that's definitely a direction a lot of us are thinking, like, oh, it'd be kind of cool if it's like Nintendo Kart. I think it'll still be called Mario Kart. You don't want to lose that branding. It's like one of the most popular pieces of branding in video game history. But it'll be like Mario Kart Nintendo All-Stars or something. It's a direction I think they should go in, and it'd be fun. It's like, you look at all the DLC that we got for the retro tracks in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. And, I mean, how many tracks have they not remade at this point? So I think something fun would be... Yeah, I mean, I wanted Luigi's Mansion from the DS to be remade, but you kind of just got to accept that some of them didn't get remade. And some of them were remade in like other games before this. So I think what would be really cool is the top 4 or 5 cups are all Mario themed. So you got all the Mario Kart action you want for the purists. But then the bottom cups, instead of being retro cups, they're Nintendo cups. So that's where you can see stuff like a Kirby racetrack, or Pikmin, or Fire Emblem, or Star Fox, or F-Zero, or, Animal Crossing, you name it, like everything. You could do like a Mario arcade track where it's all retro.
Now we're talking.
Right. So I think, and it doesn't have to be like it doesn't have to be like, oh, this is the Animal Crossing Cup, and so there's 4 tracks that are Animal Crossing. You just mix and match. You just have a whole bunch. I think fans would really like that. That'd be fun. And then, of course, you bring in Pikmin and Olimar, and you bring in the Fire Emblem characters, and you bring in, the Star Fox characters. So you do have that core Mario Kart experience with the 4 or 5 cups on the top, and all the Mario characters. But then you also have the Nintendo stuff as like a core part of the DNA, instead of just being like a little bonus thing that's awkwardly tacked on, like in Mario Kart 8.
I would say that it was handled better in the Mario Kart arcade games, with Pac-Man and Don-Chan getting better representation and being playable characters. I would like to see them back.
You played more of those than me, but yeah. I think that they should. I think it'd be something fans would really like, and I think there's a lot of room for like some fun innovation there, bringing in more characters.
One thing that makes me think they might not go the Nintendo Kart route is with Mario Kart Tour. They just stuck it to Mario Kart and showcased that they could have an amazing roster and some great tracks. Although most of them were themed around cities, so it wasn't so much going into the universe of Mario, but taking advantage of 4K. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe still looks great to this day. Imagine over 10 years later how incredible it could look in 4K. That's also going to be another selling point.
Yeah, that's one of the funny things. I remember when I first saw Mario Kart 8 on the Wii U, obviously one of the things that stands out is just like, is this real? Like, I remember thinking like, is this like a cutscene? This in-game? And I was like, no, that's in-game. Like, they really managed to build an incredible engine for Mario Kart 8. And so, like you said, that was 2013, 2014.
Yeah.
So it's been 10 years, a brand new system, which I assume is going to be more powerful. So I'm really hoping, and I think it's at least safe and logical to assume that when we do see that next Mario Kart, we will be like, holy cow, look how nice this looks. So that's an exciting element.
I do hope that if they're taking inspiration from the movie, they have as many Kongs playable as possible. Now, before getting into more Switch 2 games, about the new 3D Mario game, what do you think they're going to go with? You think it's going to be something in line with Bowser's Fury, where they're going for more open world? Like, maybe they could have something similar to Bowser's Fury, where it's a much larger open landscape, but they do multiple of those. You think they're going to go as open world as possible, or what do you think they're going to do? Or could it be a sequel to something like Super Mario Odyssey?
I don't think we're going to get that Odyssey sequel. It'd be very weird to do a direct sequel to a game that came out, 7 years ago?
Gonna be 8 years ago with the Switch 2?
Okay, so yeah, I don't think you'd do a sequel to a game that came out 8 years ago. That'd be a little weird, for like a 3D Mario game especially. And I'm not just saying that because I don't like Odyssey. Yeah, I think that when you look at like what they did with Bowser's Fury, I think that was them kind of testing the waters of like, hey, what if everything was like connected and you didn't have to like teleport or get on a little ship to fly there or whatever. And with new hardware, you got more power, and that means that you could do that kind of stuff. I think I've said this to you, Dimitri, but Mario Sunshine actually had that idea kind of in it back in 2002. If you look at Isle Delfino and you look at all the areas that you go in Mario Sunshine, they are actually all connected on that main hub world. But like, you can't go to Pina Park because the GameCube just wouldn't be able to load that. Like, from a technical standpoint, they wouldn't have been able to pull that off. But now, they probably could. The only issue I would have with that is run into a problem with theming, maybe.
That would be the problem I'd think of, too.
Right, with Bowser's Fury, I've never played it. I would like to someday, but I've watched playthroughs of like Donkey playing it and stuff, and I've noticed that even when you're in like the snow area of Bowser's Fury, off on the horizon, you see everything else. And so you don't really feel like you're in a nice winter wonderland or anything. You don't feel like you're in a themed area because it's like a part of this huge thing. So you'd need to work on that big time to make sure you feel like you're in the beach area, the forest area, the whatever area. And it's not just like a little piece of a land. But I mean, you look at Odyssey, they clearly drew inspiration from Zelda Breath of the Wild. The Koroks are a lot like the moons, and they kind of wanted to have this open world thing going on. So like if they made a Mario game that was like the size of Zelda Breath of the Wild, where you have this huge map like the Mushroom Kingdom and it spans into all these other things, that would be very ambitious and that would be really interesting. You might be able to say, oh, geez, is everything just going to be Breath of the Wild now? But they could do a lot of new stuff with it. And I think from like a platforming standpoint, it could be really cool to have a map, even if it's like half the size of the map in Breath of the Wild.
Do you think
there's
possibility it could be too open?
Well, I mean,
like too empty where it would get boring?
Well, there's a lot of emptiness in Odyssey for me. I think you go into that desert in Odyssey, and there's a lot of nothing going on in that desert. So, I mean, it just depends on how well they design it. If you have a good team, you know what you're doing, you can make anything work,
How would you say the theming was in Super Mario Odyssey?
Bad.
Elaborate.
It's all over the place. It's in one kingdom you're in a realistic city with realistic people. The next kingdom you're in this like blocky, overly colorful, faceted food kingdom, and so it's like it didn't really know what it wanted to be. And I get it, that's like supposed to be the appeal, but I just felt like it left the game not really having a good identity. Like, what am I looking at here? What is this? What does this game want to be? So I didn't really fall in love with it.
I will say, with Super Mario Sunshine, it did manage to have one core theme of the tropical vacation, but it did something new with every level of Isle Delfino, where one of them was a hotel, and the other one was a beach, amusement park. It had some great variety, while always having a core central theme. But in terms of how they're going to theme this new 3D Mario game, I think they're going to go about time travel. It seems like the only thing they really haven't done, because I did globetrotting, space travel. I think time travel would be the next logical step.
You think Mario's going to travel back in time to 1985 when he was first invented?
It's funny, Nintendo really hasn't thrown in a lot of 8-bit Mario Easter eggs recently. They used to do that all the time.
That was the whole Wii U generation.
That was!
8-bit Mario, look at that.
Well, if they're going back to the Wii U era with the cast button, might as well.
The Switch 2 is just the Wii U 2. Nintendo's very bitter that it didn't go over well, and so this is their revenge on us. They're re-releasing the Switch. Or, I mean, the Wii U.
And Labo VR 2 is their vengeance for the Virtual Boy, and it's only going to be in red and black. That would be quite the era for Nintendo. But what theme do you think the new 3D Mario will have?
To be honest, I've not really thought about it. I guess my first thought was that it'll have maybe more of a Mario 64 vibe to where you're running around the castle grounds as like the central hub of the world. Like if I'm going to go with the idea that maybe they're going to do like a big expansive open world, like a really exaggerated version of Bowser's Fury, then I'd imagine maybe at the like center, the heart of the map is Peach's castle and all that. So maybe we'll see a lot of that like iconic meadows and the colorful mountains and flowers and stuff. So yeah, I think maybe the theme will feel a little bit like a new Mario 64 in a way.
I mean, that's what they kind of tried to do with Super Mario Odyssey, and I feel like it succeeded, personally, but I know a lot of people feel it didn't, including you. It's interesting seeing how the opinion has shifted on the game, but as we wrap things up, let's talk a little bit about the end of the year for the Nintendo Switch 2, because it's got to have more games beyond launch, and I'm thinking they're definitely going to want to do Animal Crossing within the first year, and that's definitely a game for you to discuss, because I know you're definitely way more of an Animal Crossing fan than I am, even though I really did enjoy New Horizons. And Animal Crossing, I think, could be likely. Is it too early for Splatoon 4? And with 3D Mario, that could be the Christmas title of the year, or it could be Pokemon. But I'm also thinking that we could see a new Donkey Kong this year.
I mean, a new 3D Donkey Kong would be really cool. So wait, the question was which games do I think will come out this year?
Yeah, the launch year for the Nintendo Switch 2.
Okay, so 2025, like what other Switch games? Or
Switch 2
games? I think it's probably too early for Animal Crossing. I don't know. I would imagine they'll do a new Animal Crossing before Splatoon 4, simply because they made Splatoon 3, then they made... No, they made Animal Crossing, then they made Splatoon 3? Which came first?
Animal Crossing.
Yeah, so Splatoon 3 was after Animal Crossing. New Horizons. Yeah. So I can't see them doing Splatoon again, because that would be weird. You did 2 Splatoon games right in a row? I would think they would probably want to... Animal Crossing New Horizons is the most sold game in the history of Japan. Like, no video game has sold more than that. So if I'm running Nintendo, I would definitely be like, make another one of those, please, and let's get it out in, like, the first or second year of our system. So I can see, like, 2026 being Animal Crossing, so I don't think that would be this year. Well, there is a game that Sakurai said he's been working on for 2.5 years now, secretly. Did you see that? He confirmed that.
I didn't see that. You think that there's going to be a new Smash?
Sakurai has this YouTube channel where he was uploading videos talking about game development, right? Well, when he ended it, he said, oh, hey, by the way, these videos you've been watching were recorded like 2 years ago. And this whole time, I've actually been working on a new game proposal. And so, yeah, there's a possibility we might see what that Sakurai game is. I don't know if it's Smash Brothers. Maybe. I don't know. Could be something totally new. I would kind of maybe lean towards, I think it could be just something totally new from Sakurai. Don't know if you really need to rush into another Smash Brothers just yet. But yeah, I think we'll see whatever Sakurai was working on. We might see at least a hint or a teaser at some point in 2025. Whether or not it releases, I don't know. Trying to think of other Nintendo franchises that might be out in first year, but maybe some more that are smaller. F-Zero, man, they've been trying to kind of build up F-Zero a bit. They've got, I think F-Zero is all over the Virtual Console stuff. I know it's not called Virtual Console, but I just still call it that. They've been getting all those out. They did the F-Zero 99, and they even gave it a decent amount of updates. So I feel like that's maybe Nintendo testing the waters. That's maybe Nintendo trying to build up the brand before they launch a new game. So who knows? We could see a new F-Zero in the summertime. I think that's not totally unreasonable. We could even see some DLC coming to games that are already like, Mario Party, Super Mario Party Jamboree. We could get some springtime DLC for that. And, I know that's not a Switch 2 game, but it's still something they could do. I think they'll support the regular Switch for like a year. I think what we'll see is we'll see some games that are coming to both systems, because if they make a game for the Switch 2, and technically it could run on the original Switch, it'd be really stupid not to also put it on the original Switch, because that's like 140 million people, whatever, to sell to. You do have to stop doing that eventually, because you want people to go to the new system. But in the first year, it's okay. You can kind of do that. You get, you're getting tens of millions of more dollars by putting that stuff out there. And you'll still have the tentpole games that only play on the Switch too, like the new Mario Kart and whatever, so.
Right.
But other than that, yeah, I think that's kind of what I think could come out. I mean, I'm sure there's more that I just can't think of, but.
I would say Donkey Kong's also a good bet, because they are doing the theme parks for it. It's been a long time since we got into new Donkey Kong, and I feel they built it up so much with the movie and the theme park that it's about time. I'm thinking that they're also going the 3D route.
That would be great. Who's developing it, do you think?
That's a good question. There was rumors about Nintendo EPD doing it, but they would also develop a 3D Mario. EPD could make more games than one, although be a little bit weird seeing a 3D Mario and a 3D Donkey Kong in 1 year. See, the thing with the Nintendo Switch 2 is, what's interesting about the Switch is that it didn't really take off with new games until last year, because during the first few years of the Switch's life, it relied heavily on Wii U ports, making the system still feel relatively new, until I would say last year when we started getting things like Pikmin 4, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, and then Super Mario Bros. Wonder. So seeing a lot of these big games come so late in the Switch's life, we're probably not going to get a new Zelda game the first year. We're probably not going to get Pikmin 5 anytime soon. So it just leaves it limited to what games we could see throughout the first year. I think one thing Nintendo's going to do to sell the Switch to is advertise performance patches and upgrades for Switch games on the Switch 2, like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom being able to run at 60 frames 4K. That's something I could see them doing.
Yeah, I think that is something that would be a really cool feature, you know, being able to play games. I mean, that also get people to maybe pick up some games they didn't buy. I'm sure people are not saying, oh, I'm not going to buy Tears of the Kingdom because it's not 4K 60 frames. Like, nobody really said that.
No.
But maybe you didn't buy a game, and now it's like, oh, I've been meaning to get that game, and now I can play it on the Switch 2, and it's 4K 60 frames. Okay, now's the time to buy it. You know, it could be something that gets people to go, oh, I'm going to try that game now. Not for that reason, but it's just an extra little thing that, you know, kind of puts you over the edge.
They did that with the Game Boy Color to an extent, where you play Game Boy games on it, there's going to be a little bit of color added. So, with 4K, that would essentially be the equivalent to that upgrade. But overall, are you excited for the Nintendo Switch 2? I gotta be blunt, I'm ready to move on from the Nintendo Switch. Not so much because I feel like the hardware, we are in desperate need of new hardware, but I feel the Switch is managed fine for most games. But in terms of games I've wanted for the longest time, it's been over a decade without a new Mario Kart. Just seeing Mario Kart 9 would be amazing. And the future of Nintendo, I'm very excited.
I'm always excited to see what Nintendo has coming up. Obviously, I love video games. It's been a thing all my life. And so, of course, I'm going to be excited about the new Nintendo thing. The hardware itself, I probably won't care about. It'll be like, okay, whatever. It's just something you got to get so you can play the new Nintendo stuff. But the possibilities are, you know, and as we've talked tonight, the possibilities are exciting. Seeing a new, we could see a new Mario Kart in literally a month, Demeech, in January. Who knows? I don't know. We don't know. But like, it's not weird or unreasonable to say in a month we might be looking at a new Mario Kart, you know. Not playing it yet, but looking at it. More from Metroid Prime. So I'm ready to not move. You know, it's funny. I didn't like the Switch for like the first 4 or 5 years. There were some games here or there that I liked, but it was only like 2023 and 2024 where I started to be like, I genuinely like the experience.
I was in a similar boat.
I didn't think we were. I thought you've liked the Switch up until now.
No, with the Nintendo Switch, to summarize it, there were games that released throughout the years that every year at least had about 3 or 4 games that I absolutely loved. Like with 2017, it was games like Breath of the Wild, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, even though that's a port, Super Mario Odyssey, Kingdom Battle. Then 2018, all we got was Smash that year. I will say, I was just not enthused with the Switch's life until 2023 when we started to get a bunch of heavy hitters and new experiences. Because a lot of the Switch relied on Wii U ports, and in 2022, there were a lot of games that released that year that were just bad. And at that point, I was just kind of questioning Nintendo. But then all that changed in 2023.
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of games I didn't really love. I think, in a year's time, there might have been 1 or 2 games for the Switch where I was like, oh, that was good. Oh, that one I liked. But, like you said, there were a lot, maybe people forgot, I don't know, but there was a lot of relying on Wii U ports. And hey, it made sense. I mean, look at Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. My God, it's made them $1 billion again, right? So it made sense. But those first few years were like a lot of that.
It dragged on.
Yeah. And the good news is that won't happen with the Switch 2, I don't think, because it's backwards compatible with the Switch. So you can't just release a Switch game on the Switch 2 and be like, oh, it's whatever. Like, that won't really work so well. You can't do a port of it because you can just put the thing in. You can just backwards compatible. So hopefully we won't have that happening. But yeah, I mean, even games that were kind of mediocre by most people's standards, like this year or last year, I kind of liked, like Endless Ocean Luminous. I get it. Like, there's a lot you can say about it, but I still had fun. Like, it's still this, like, weird online open world scuba diving thing, and I enjoyed it. I don't think it's a 10 out of 10. It's probably like a 7 out of 10 at best, but it was still like, hey, this is different, like, this is different, and it's unique, and it's a callback to the Wii days, and like Mario vs. Donkey Kong is my favorite Game Boy game ever, and so that being remade was fun. Princess Peach game is not great, but like, if you're a little girl, it is. Like, I gave it to my niece over Christmas. She's loving it. And even me playing it, I was like, oh, it's cute, whatever. So I do think like the last couple years have been like, they felt like they're at least different, like different flavors. And it felt like stuff that was being made that would, like, it kind of felt fun and different, and it didn't feel like lazy or just like eh.
I think summarizing my main problems with the Nintendo Switch was the over-reliance on Wii U ports, which was throughout the first 4 years of the system's life. Mostly the first 3 years, that's where it really just felt like, okay, they're relying too much on them and treating them like new games. And yeah, it makes sense financially, but it was a problem if you had a Wii U before, and the system didn't have much of an identity of its own or new experiences. But when there were the new experiences, I found most of them to be incredible. But at the same time, there's also the problem of Nintendo releasing games unfinished with the free updates. I've gone on about that so much, but they seem to stop doing that.
Yeah, that seems like a thing of the past, thankfully. Yeah, and I mean, we saw him do like I think that the Mario Kart DLC that they introduced, like, what was it, a couple years ago? That was like one of the best ideas they could have had. It was a little lazy at first. They were like directly kind of ported over from the way they looked in Tour. But they clearly took the feedback that the internet was giving. Everybody's like, oh, this looks like crap, and people were comparing them. And as we kind of moved on, you could see like they were trying. And that was super cool. So yeah, I think the last 3 years, I'd say last 2 to 3 years, Nintendo really started to come into their own with the Switch. And so I'm really kind of excited and positive about what we can be seeing with the next system.
Now that they can't rely on Switch ports like they did for Wii U ports, they're gonna have to really output new games. And also, there can't be the excuse, oh, it didn't sell well. These are new games! No. Switch sold so much, it's almost PS2 levels. They can't do that anymore. That's an exciting prospect. And the only problem I'd worry about is potential game droughts, because if it's going to be 4K, game development time will take longer. And I feel a lot of the Switch's problems were rooted by the fact that it probably was rushed. They needed something after the Wii U, which is why you can attribute the first few years to relying on Wii U ports. Because look at a year like 2018. That year was terrible. The only game they had was Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. And everything else was Wii U ports or mediocre.
And even Ultimate, in some ways, was port. It had elements of a port in that. I know I'll take some crap for that, but there's a lot of stuff that was ported from Ultimate. It was kind of a best of collection. It is a new game, don't get me wrong, but there's some definite porting going on there with that game.
To be fair, I'm not as crazy with Super Smash Bros. Ultimate as most people are. I know most people love the game, but the lack of trophies, it was a real bummer. Not enough to ruin the game. It does have the best roster, but yeah, just relying on that game for an entire year didn't do it for me. At least the 3DS had some cool games that year, though. And also, you can see that with the hardware of the Switch, like the Joy-Con drift and stuff like that. That could be attributed to a rushed launch, but with 8 years to develop a new console, I feel like this is going to go much smoother, and that's exciting.
Yeah, there's no excuses now to have anything that feels like it's been rushed. This is the longest we've ever gone without a new Nintendo system, and I feel like they've really waited as far as they can to introduce a new system, and so I don't think there should be elements of it being rushed.
Do you think that the output's going to be good? Because I will say, with the Nintendo Switch, even this year the output's been pretty good. Like a new game at least once every 2 months.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously we have no way of knowing, but I would think they should probably have no trouble getting games out. Because like the last couple of years, it's not like been the big heavy hitters. It's not been like a new Mario Kart or a new, anything. So, yeah, I think they'll probably have that under control. Furukawa is a businessman, so if you're a businessman, you need to know like what's coming out. Like we need to get our heavy hitters, get this. So he's got that going for him. He really knows how to kind of keep a schedule going, even if a couple of those years, But yeah.
As long as it doesn't happen again, I mean, I'm fine with it. As long as they stop the criticisms that I had with them before with Furukawa's initial years as Nintendo president, then I'd honestly be fine with the direction that they've been taking, because if you look at the games, like I said before, they're listening to fan feedback, which is something they didn't really do with the Wii U era. And that's especially apparent with games like Star Fox Zero, Paper Mario, Color Splash, stuff like that. We're not getting that anymore. We're getting games that pretty much exactly respond to the fans. It seems Nintendo is more business-oriented, so that makes more sense for them and the consumers. And if a system sells better, that means that we're going to have it for longer, and we're going to be able to play with more people, and that means more games. So all of this is very exciting. But I think that's about wraps things up. Have a very happy new year, everyone. Make sure to subscribe to Joshy. Subscribe to the BitBlock for the Nintendo content, and also JT Shine. He just posted a Christmas tour video, and even if Christmas season is past, this is the king of Christmas, and also the king of Halloween himself. So
it's always Christmas in my heart, Dimitri.
But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and keep calm and dada on.
Listen to Joshi. You must listen to Joshi.